Right, I think everyone's here, slightly surprisingly. So, it's fine. It's all right. No problem. Welcome and Happy New Year, everybody. No, I'm just getting everybody started. And just to say, it's very nice to see everybody again. Some of you very distant, so please shout and wave if I don't spot that somebody wants to come in and speak, because it does feel as if we are very spaced out. And oh, I seem to be Richard Howard. Sorry, they're just starting the thing. We are starting slightly late. I'm actually very impressed that everyone is here as not later than we already are, given the traffic. So it's great that everybody is here. And we will start in a couple of minutes as soon as the live stream gets going. I gather there's one question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which we didn't receive, but which we'll take anyway. That's fine. And just before we start, also very much welcome to Niamh, who has joined us as a new member from Cambridge City. So it's very good to have Niamh join us, and Niamh is thoroughly expert in this area, so I'm sure she'll be a great addition to our committee. I'm just going to find a pen. Is there anything else anybody wants to say kind of informally before we start? No? Are we ready to go? Okay. In which case we will make a start. So welcome everybody to this first meeting for 2022 for the Skills Committee for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. It's great to see a turnout from everybody. I think everybody is, we haven't got any apologies this morning, which is fantastic. So I've welcomed members of the press and public who have joined us, mostly online, I think, because we're having very limited numbers in the room at the moment due to the pandemic. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so feel free to take pictures or tweet during the meeting. But everybody, if everybody who is here could keep their phones on silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place, that would be great. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, we will adjourn the meeting and move outside, but it's quite chilly, so let's hope that doesn't happen. I think part one of the agenda is governance items. So we've started with that already. The first of those is really to welcome Niamh Sweeney, who is the new member representing Cambridge City Council. So welcome, Niamh, it's great to have you here. And I think we also have the Chief Executive, Eileen Milner, who is joining the meeting via Zoom, but we'll come to her if she wants to make any comments. Second item, does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-statutory disclosable interest in any item being considered today? I don't see any disclosable interest, so that's great. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the 10th of November. So we're being asked to confirm those as an accurate record. So is there any member who wishes to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes at this point? I don't see any hands, so I will take those as accepted as accurate and I will sign them shortly. And then we will move on to the action log. So Parminder, if you could take us through the action log, that would be great.
Good morning, members. Just making sure you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. That's fine. Thank you, Parminder.
So good morning, members, and good morning to members of the public who are joining us today at the Skills Committee. So just to very briefly take you through the committee action log. So the first item was regarding the GrowthWorks Management Review, September 2021. A member had queried which companies had been unsuccessful in relation to inward investment bids. And the response was sent to the Skills Committee members and Economic Development officers to update them on the current unsuccessful inward investment opportunities. And moving forward, we will continue to circulate information to Economic Development officers and the Skills Committee as and when this materialises. The next item was regarding the adult education budget and our commissioning approach for 2022-23. And there was a query about our approach with relation to schools. And the response to this is that eligibility for AEB is for the 19+ age group, except for family learning. However, schools continue to benefit from AEB investment in terms of their workforce being trained through AEB. And family learning is funded through our two local authority providers, City College Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Skills. And in terms of Cambridgeshire Skills, they report that they work with village colleges, schools and academies. They've got courses running at 8 schools and negotiations for a further 4 schools. And City College Peterborough reported that they've worked with over 60 different primary and secondary schools, but post-lockdown, they have struggled to engage schools in family learning. However, discussions are ongoing with partner schools and they look forward to resuming. So the next action was regarding the Community Renewal Fund, and this was information about the projects was circulated week commencing the 6th of December. The next suite of actions are regarding the employment and skills strategy, and all of these have been addressed in the latest version of the strategy, which is an item on the agenda today. And then the final one was regarding the availability of destination data on a residency level. And just to update members that we have escalated this to the Department for Education, and at the time of writing, we're waiting for a response, which we will share with members once received. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parminder. Are there any questions on the action log at this point? No. Okay, we'll look forward to continued updates on some of those that are work in progress. But thank you very much, Parminder. That's great. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. We've received a number of questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. A copy of the questions has been circulated with the exception of one. So there is a question which we hadn't been informed about, but which we will take today. We will take the questions and responses at the start of the relevant items on the agenda. So with that, we'll move on to the agenda plan. Does anyone have any comments on the agenda plan at this point? It just seems slightly surprising we have this at this point on the agenda. It would seem more logical to have it at the end, in which case we could pick up any changes that have been made during the meeting, but maybe we'll come back to that in the future. I don't see any comments on the agenda plan at this point, so we'll carry on. And then there's the Combined Authority Forward Plan. Are there any comments on that? Not so far. Okay. So we'll move on to part 2, which is reports to the Combined Authority Board. The first of these is on Peterborough University Phase 3 business case. So Mahmood Fariji will introduce this report. Good morning, Mahmood. I can see you're on the screen.
Good morning, Councillor. Good morning, members and all the members of the public. Thank you for having me. This paper is about the Phase 3 of the University of Peterborough. And the purpose of the paper is to inform the Skills Committee of the vision of the 3rd phase of the University of Peterborough and to inform them of the business case. I would like the members to note that the request to recommend to the Combined Authority are a list of measures which are basically approval of a range of actions necessary to achieve the legal and contractual framework that we need in order to deliver the Phase 3. If I may, I would like to give a short background to this request. The main aim of the university expansion is to deliver a new higher education provider for the Peterborough, with 2 aims in mind. The first aim is to increase the skills level of local people, and secondly, to increase the highly skilled employment opportunity. It's worth noting at this stage that it's also a mayoral priority within the Combined Authority's business plan, and a key intervention within the local industrial strategy and the employment and skills strategy. And this is to address this current disconnect between work and qualification. So the main aim for the university expansion is to consolidate and build on the phases already approved. Just to act as a reminder, the phase 1 and 2 are already underway. Phase 1 of the ARU Peterborough University is going to be completed in July this year, and will open the first teaching building to its first student cohorts in September 2022. It will provide space for around 2,000 students, rising to 3,000 by 2025. And the curriculum are to do with health, social care, education, management, finance, and law. The phase 2 of the university is a net zero innovation incubator, which was approved for funding in mid-2022. It's received its planning permission earlier this year, and we started work, the construction of the building in October last year. Completion is forecast for December 2022. And we are now requesting to go ahead with phase 3 of the university. Phase 3 is the next phase of this program. The key feature of the phase 3 is the increase in the student numbers by another 1,700 to around 4,700 from 2024. So the business case is concerned with the phase 3 development, which comprises a living lab, which is basically a public-facing, high-quality, interactive science center for Peterborough, with public space for exhibitions, events, and it's basically designed to stimulate and inspire more young people into their STEM sectors. So in order to start delivering, we need to do some urgent works. Phase 3, the works are mainly to do with the adjustments to the PropCo legal arrangements. So if I may just explain that particular point very briefly. So Peterborough City Council secured £20 million of funding from the Levelling Up Fund, and it was match funded by almost £8 million of investment, £2 million from CPCA Recycle Growth Fund, and ARU around £4 million. The project will be delivered through already established joint vehicle, the Peterborough Higher Education Limited, known as PropCo. So this phase is due to be delivered in 2024. And this additional funding necessitates changes to the shareholder subscription. And this in turn will impact on the current CPCA position as the majority shareholder. And it is for that reason that we need to make some amendments to the collectively agreed, which we collectively agree with partners, PCC and ARU, what they are. The key items such as drag rights have already been discussed at a high level between PCC and ARU and CPCA, and a mutually agreed position is tentatively been agreed. However, we need lawyers to start detailing this out. This work needs to start as soon as possible, and we are targeting to complete this by February this year in order to meet the timeline of the LUF funding, which requires us to start work and spend by March this year. So the key message also is that the business case has been developed to provide the critical assurance that the project is viable from a strategic, financial, commercial, and economic point of view, rather than an investment decision, because the financial implications are more about protection of the phase 1, the £25 million investment. And that is why we are proposing that the certain critical protections, primarily to do with the drag right, is safeguarded. So we are asking the Skills Committee to recommend a number of delegated authority to the Chief Executive of the CPCA, which in consultation with the Chief Legal Officer and the Chief Financial Officer, to agree and approve the final amendments to the legal documents on behalf of the Combined Authority Board as a shareholder. That is a very brief outline of what this paper is about, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmood. That's an admirable introduction to quite a complex set of decisions. John, do you want to add anything, or were you happy to leave it there? Are there any questions from members? Lynn, and then Eileen.
So, yes, good, thank you. Obviously, I'm very much for all these recommendations. I'm sure you can appreciate that. But wanting to make the point, of course, that the university won't just be for Peterborough. It is intended to be a regional university, hence why ARU have been so good and so particular about it, because we're hoping people will come in from all over the combined authority area. But my question really relates to the benefit cost ratio. I noticed was 6.7, which sounded very good to me, but perhaps somebody could explain why it sort of falls from the original building. It falls from 10 down to 6.7, I think, but but it's still said to be very, very much a very good benefit cost ratio. And secondly, I did notice that there was an indication that they'd been going for council's opinion. And I just wondered if that had been obtained in relation to the planning. That was in the business case.
Thank you. Mahmood, do you want to answer those?
Sure. The BCR, as you said, Councillor, is very high and significantly positive, because even though it's been dropped slightly from the phase 1 BCR assessment, but it still stands as a very, by definition, as a very high BCR. And the reason for a slight drop to do with the fact that there are now 2 buildings, and the quantitative measures are to do with the fact that there's 2 investments and 2 sets of costs associated with the university, whereas in phase 1 we only were measuring against the costs and benefits of 1 building. One thing that to note, that the benefit cost ratio that you were referring to are the quantitative aspect of the BCR. There's a qualitative aspect which has not been measured but has been indicated and noted. So even though those aspects are not measured, it still shows that from a quantitative point of view, it is a very high business cost ratio, which provides even greater assurance of the viability of this scheme. In terms of the details of the business cost ratio, it is stipulated in the business case, and I'm happy to sort of make a case for it as a specific response later on to the councillor.
Are you happy with that, Lynn?
Yes, I also asked the question about an opinion from council that was being obtained, and whether that's been obtained.
My apologies. Yes, in terms of the planning, we are in the I'm assuming you're referring to the planning aspect of the approval. This consultation has started and is going ahead, and we are expecting the full application to be put to the council by the middle of this year. So we are in consultation with the council.
Thank you, Mahmood. I think John also wants to chip in on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a little bit of supplementary information. The council and council, I think you were referring to council, legal opinion, and that was actually about our original plan, and understanding that we should actually apply for full outline planning for the whole campus before we might be granted detailed planning for phase 3. And actually council advised that actually that wouldn't be necessary, and we could go straight for, which we are, and in parallel detailed planning on phase 3 in parallel with getting outline planning for the whole campus. And we were particularly worried that outline planning for the whole campus, not least because there's a stadium kicking around as well, might actually snag us up in all sorts of problems. So we were quite pleased that we could go in parallel straight for planning on phase 3.
Thank you, John. I've got Eileen now, and then John Nish and Chrissy.
Thank you. If we do approve the business case today, are we well on course to meet the deadlines and not lose that levelling up funding? And I've just got a more general question about the university as a whole. I understand that the deadline for applications to universities is at the end of this month, and I was just wondering how applications are going for phase 1. I also have a further question, which is a general question as well. Phase 1, originally it was proposed to be engineering and STEM science subjects, and it isn't anymore. And I wonder how phase 1 and phase 2 will work together if the objective is to retain those students in Peterborough to keep their skills. So is it expected that students from phase 1 will benefit from what is being offered as part of phase 2, or are they completely separate? So I'm sorry, these are very general questions on something that's more specific.
Thank you. If I may respond, as far as the first question is concerned, the deadline the deadline for the LOF funding stipulates that we start spending and start the work by March this year. Part of the reason we are putting this paper to the board is to allow us to do exactly that. By consenting to the delegate authority, we hope to be able to amend the shareholders agreement and the legal framework in order to appoint the consultant to start the design of the building. And we are targeting to do that by end of February. And we are quite confident that we can do that. And also the other stipulation is to complete the structure of the building by March 2024. And we have a very robust program in place, which again allows us to meet that deadline. So we are quite confident that we can do that. The other one was about the addition, about the curriculum. And I think that in terms of the curriculum, the current curriculum of the phase 1 has got some aspects of the STEM, like the engineering and agri-tech and environment, as well as creative art and sciences, health education and social care. What the phase 3 would do is to build on that and provide the more robust STEM-related courses to be added and enhancing that the phase 1 curriculum. Both curriculums, phase 1 and phase 2, are working around development of net zero strategy, which has been the ethos of the university. So there is a correlation between phase 1 curriculum and phase 3, which builds on that ethos. As far as the addition of phase, I missed the second question. If I may ask, if you could repeat that, please, I would be grateful.
Thank you. It was just a general question about if there's any sense of how the applications are going for the entry in 2020.
Yes. Well, ARU has had 2 open days, and those open days have been overwhelmingly received and supported and the early signs are that they are expecting from the responses they've had and the queries, they're estimating that around 1,200 applicants is a number that they are sort of quite confident. However, the more detailed analysis will be obtained once the deadline of the 26th of January of UCAS is reached, which is in a week or two time. They will be able to provide more robust results for us. But the answer to your question is that huge amount of outreach has been done within Peterborough and surrounding regions, and I think they are quite confident that the numbers are above 1,200 onwards.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahmood. That's great. I'll move on to John now.
Thank you, Chair. You've actually covered one of the questions I had on deadlines, so thank you very much. I can briefly that one away. I suppose the other area I've got is concern is sort of, I don't know, it's just a general comment on the funding aspect, because obviously prices are increasing dramatically everywhere. And are we confident within the scheme of where we're going that one, we can meet those costs, and the others within those bounds of areas can actually also meet their costs? 20 million from Peter is a lot of money. So as long as we're confident with that, I think it's actually basically the paper is fairly technical, just saying we need to make sure we can continue and move fast, which is why we want the delegated authority. So I don't have much of a problem with that one. So I think that's really just a commentary there. We just got to keep an eye on those costs and where they go, because from the commodity authority is a fairly small input to a large. And I suppose the last one is, again, I welcome the fact that we're actually trying to expand it out a bit more, because it does seem very Peterborough-centred at the moment again. And we know from here it probably isn't, but I think we just need to make sure that's wider aspect and how much we're managing to pull in from other locations. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Hang on, Mahmood. I think John might want to take this one, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do the first one first on the costs. Yes, because of COVID and actually Brexit as well, in terms of the supply chain impacts, 1, 2, and now 3 as phases have been quite severely affected. On phase 1, we actually went through our contingency quite quickly. We got down to 369k of about a 1.2 million contingency on phase 1. We've done some value engineering on the building, and we're hoping to get that back up actually to something like 500k in the next management meeting. Phase 2, we actually shrank the building a little bit because we were just laying orders for the phase 2 right at the peak of COVID and Brexit hitting, and the supply chains really putting their prices up, but we didn't affect any of the outcomes. On phase 3, the design consultants that worked on the FBC have very slightly, and I think it's something like 8%, shrunk the size of the building by 8% in order to meet the likely costs of the supply chain increases in costs. But again, that just doesn't affect the outcomes. We're just using the building in a smarter way. So we definitely have been subject to price rises in the supply chain, but we've adapted as we've gone, using value engineering to constrain what we were actually getting. The second part of that question is, this is very much a regional university. We'll be reaching out down into the Huntingdonshire and east and sort of north a bit into Fenland as well. This is very much a regional catchment area, especially for the sort of courses and the sort of businesses we want to be supporting with this university.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Chris now.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on the last 2 comments actually about the wider catchment area. Has any provision or consideration been given to transporting students in from the outlying and rural areas into the campus? And if it hasn't, should it be?
Mahmood, do you want to pick that one up?
It's a very good question. I think what we are trying to do is to provide a pathway to Fenland and surrounding area, because as John said, it is a regional university. It's not just about Peterborough, as important Peterborough is. So two things needs to be done. One is the creation of the pipeline to attract those youngsters from the Fenland and regional areas. But the second thing is to provide them with the accessible transport. And this is something that our transport colleagues in the Combined Authority, in collaboration with the piece of work that is going on with the Peterborough City Council in terms of refreshing the transport strategy, we are looking at.
Thank you.
Can I just come back on that,
Yeah,
Chair?
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And this is not obviously just Fendon. I'm thinking of, all the other rural areas of the Combined Authority, because the normal links, the services are not wonderfully good for getting people into Peterborough at the times they need to be. So it's something that I think needs looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. I think John wants to come in as well.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I've actually got a little bit more supplementary information. In fact, one of our officers, Parminder, is creating a bid to the Mayor's Gain Share at the moment, and working with our transport colleagues around bus passes and subsidised bus travel for HE and FE. So there's something specific going on with subsidised travel, but in the case of Fenland, there's also a really strong partnership being developed with COWA, the College of West Anglia, and there is a potential within Fenland's Levelling Up Fund bid to do something with COWA that would potentially give students maybe a foundation year or even year 1 and 2 actually in Wisbech, and then finishing the degrees off in Peterborough. So it isn't just about transporting everyone to Peterborough at once for the whole course. Actually, part of it could be doing part of the course in Wisbech, for instance, part of the early years course maybe in Cambridge, and then actually coordinating those regional delivery nodes. So it's not just about putting everyone in a bus for the whole thing. It's about sort of blended delivery across the area.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Niamh, but I'm also going to say that I haven't heard any concerns about the recommendations that we're actually making decisions on today. And I think some of these questions we should ask to come back with to a separate meeting. Niamh.
Sorry, in that case, this probably isn't very relevant, but it does follow on from what you've just said, John. I was just interested in we've talked about recruitment of students and deployment of students and where they would be around the county, but have we any issues of recruiting academic staff?
Mummy, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, there's been substantial work being going on behind the scene by ARU to create a team dedicated to the university. There's been the recent appointment of, I believe, 4 to 5 executive posts dedicated to the university in Peterborough, and in conjunction with that, there's an ongoing recruitment of managers and roles dedicated to various aspects of delivery, operational delivery, as well as the academic delivery. So yes, there has been quite a substantial recruitment on behalf of the area of Peterborough.
Thank you. I'm going to stop this item now because I think we're getting on to significantly broader discussions about things related to Peterborough University, which are very important. I do want to say that I think we, as a skills committee, it is important for us to be really well informed about what's going on at Peterborough University, and it's really exciting to see the relatively rapid progress at the moment as the university gets started. I was lucky enough to go and visit in the autumn and see the building site that it was then and have a chat to the staff who are leading the project there. I think it would be really good. I know we'd hoped to have this meeting in Peterborough. I don't know what we're going to be able to do about pandemic and visits and things, but I do think it's important that we are updated soon on how the UCAS applications are going, how the recruitment of academic staff are going, all these wider issues. I also think it's really important that we have a broader update on the discussions which are going on at the Transport Committee and at the Combined Authority, and in fact at the Greater Cambridge Partnership about bus services, because they're really, really important for the Skills Committee. So I will suggest that we put that on the agenda at some point, because I do think it's something that we need to be taking an interest in. However, back to today's agenda, I haven't heard anybody have any concerns about the paper, that all the decisions that are in front of us. I think there's been a lot of support for the idea that we need to move forward relatively quickly with this, and that the delegations and the business case and the arrangements that have been put before us seem appropriate, given that need to move forward quickly. So I'm going to move to the recommendation. First of all, I'm going to say thank you to Mahmood for a very comprehensive paper and a good summary of a relatively complex situation. I hope that we can take all the recommendations on block and take them as written. So, because otherwise it's going to take me a while to read them out. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for taking these forward, please? So I'll take Lynn and John as proposer and seconder. And can I see all of those in favour of the recommendations, please? I think that's unanimous. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mahmood. And we'll look forward to hearing soon about the progress at Peterborough, because it is quite exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Health and Care Sector Work Academy. And that is going to be introduced by Fliss, I think. So I will wait for Fliss to appear. Thank you, Fliss.
Hi, good morning to you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. I will just throw in a caveat here. I unfortunately have COVID at the moment, so I'm not on top form. So hopefully I will be coherent enough for you, but I will keep my introductions to my papers short. Okay, so the Health and Care Sector Work Academy is one of 6 innovative employment pilots which were commissioned by the Department for Work and Pensions in January 2018. Originally, the pilot was due to finish in 2021, but due to a number of reasons, the main reason being the pandemic, the pilot unfortunately didn't reach the target numbers in the original contract period. So therefore, DWP have since agreed to an extension of the pilot until March 2023. You will probably recall that City College Peterborough are the lead partner for the Academy, and the executive principal is now leading on the project, and her and I are working closely to ensure that we meet the revised targets and profile spend to be completed in March 2023. The City College have recently employed a new colleague who will be solely focused on the delivery of the Academy. And we are already engaging with a number of wider delivery partners to ensure that we can meet the targets as suggested. So it's acknowledged that the Academy must significantly increase engagement to reach the forecast spend and student numbers too. So the Skills Committee are invited today to recommend to the Combined Authority Board to approve the new profile spend in accordance with the approved extension of the innovative employment pilot on recruitment and progression into the health and care sector, and also to note the performance of the Health and Care Sector Work Academy to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss. I'll take Liz and then Eileen.
Thank you. First of all, wish you better, Fliss. You're doing extremely well. First of all, I want to say that I am desperately keen to support this. I was sitting in the Health Scrutiny Committee only this week, where a key factor to the success of the new ICP is about staffing, right from schools right the way through. And of course, this is a key part of that process. There were just a couple of things that I just wanted to ask. I noticed that there's been some investment in facilities, and I just wondered where they were, but also there is a theme running through quite a lot of the papers that we have today, where we have supply, but we don't seem to have demand, and therefore creating that demand and getting that recruitment is absolutely key. So I was wondering, I hope this is not too operational, but it really needs to be a huge emphasis on being able to recruit people to this. And I was just wondering whether, obviously we recruit to level 1. I'm concerned that we don't do much more active other than the level 2, and level 3, of course, is really important. But also we know that we have perhaps a malaise or a difficulty post-COVID about motivation of returning to work. And so we have a gap, not just of identifying people into this, but also we're working perhaps to change mindset. And I'm just wondering how that is going to be looked at. Sorry, that's a really long question.
Yeah, I think I remember. So the first question, the facilities are in City College Peterborough's campus in the city, and they're great. And the mayor went to open the centre, and really good feedback, both from students and also local employers too. And second, yeah, I agree with you. And so we're working very closely with DWP to look at referrals there, and also using very different engagement approaches going forward as well. So we're looking at bringing in a number of new providers who are already engaged in the health and care sector, who have strong recruitment already, of which we would perhaps subcontract some of that provision to, making sure that we're getting careers advice correct, both for those leaving school, but also people already in careers, already in the job market. So there's a number of different ways. We need to think differently and do things differently than what we've done in the past. And there's recognition that we can't just do the same again.
Yes, Liz.
I was just wondering who leads on all of this integration, all of this pulling all of these threads together. How do we actually make sure we have the right people around the table, and who takes the lead on this? I know there's lots and lots of partners who are very keen to be involved, but unless somebody drives this, we won't get where we need to be at the different levels.
So for this project, it will be myself and Pat Carrington. So therefore, Pat will lead on behalf of City College Peterborough, and I will lead making sure that we bring the right people together and engaging with the right stakeholders from across the region.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen.
Thank you. Just for clarification, this started in January 2018 and was running until January 2021. So 2 years of that, there wasn't the COVID pandemic. And I just wonder whether there were particular problems in the first 2 years that meant that we've got such a low uptake, and would that be remedied by the changes that are being introduced for the next extended phase? Thank you.
So John, I don't know if you can help me on why it was slow to start off with, but I do know that there is certainly a renewed focus on this project, and so therefore I'm not willing to let it not succeed, but I do not know the reasons for why it was slow to start. John, I don't know if you've got any more information there.
Yeah, thanks, Fliss. 2018, 2019, before the COVID pandemic hit us in March 2020, were really slow to start, and I think that was a result of City College having some significant problems in engaging with employers. DWP a little bit as well. City College are predominantly a community learning college, and I think in those early days, before we had GrowthWorks with skills from the combined authority, it was that demand, what you referred to, Liz, as the demand side of the supply equation. It was a demand issue and linking with employers. Since then, we launched GrowthWorks with Skills in January 2021, so it's nearly a year in now. City College have also developed, using Opportunity Peterborough before GrowthWorks with Skills got involved, better relationships with employers. Just last week, in fact, a director of Northwest Anglia Health Trust reached out to us, and they have significant supply of skills issues, and this health academy is perfect for them. So that they really want to partner and get a very close relationship with the hospitals they've got on patch, particularly in Peterborough, and this health academy to get a direct relationship with students being picked up and trained at the City College, but with employment at the hospital. So there's a lot going on since those first 2 years of 2018-19, which were very slow to start.
Thank you, that's helpful. Lynn.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out whether it was just City College doing the work in those first 2 years, or whether there were other colleges involved across the region in this, and also what happened to them, and whether we used independent providers in relation to this as well.
So I'll answer the first 2 years where you weren't here, Fliss, and you can answer the second 2 years where you know much better than I do. When it kicked off, in fact, it was just City College, and that was one of the issues on the supply side of the equation. But as Fliss will now tell you, it's now broadened out, which has helped us a great deal.
Correct. So we're in conversation with a number of independent training providers, but also the college networkers too within the combined authority area, to ensure that we have geographic spread across the whole of the combined authority area. But it is City College Peterborough who are leading, and they will subcontract provision to wider parts.
Thank you. Again, I think I know there's been a lot of concern, and there is a real wish around on this committee to make this project work, because it is incredibly important, not just for the training and but actually for the wider healthcare system. We really need to make it work. So what I'm going to suggest, I haven't heard anybody. I mean, I think actually the concern up until now has been making sure that we can continue to run the project and to get the extension that we have from the government, which we have now got, and that's excellent news. But I think that there is a real need now to make sure that we don't waste that extra time that we've got, and that we make sure that the project is now really delivering. So what I'm going to ask is that I think it says in the papers that there's a new body who are overseeing a kind of group who are looking at this project, who are meeting in January, and that you would report back to us every 6 months. I think maybe we want to hear back quite quickly from how that meeting in January goes. So if we could have something on our agenda for our next meeting, and I can't remember whether that's January or February, actually, somebody will tell me. March, sorry, whether it's March or February, in March. So if we can have a report back in March on how that is going, and possibly get Pat to the meeting so that she can answer our questions, because I think it's really important to understand that it does need to be led by City College, and we need them to be explaining to us how they are ramping up and having, I mean, the site is great at City College, but actually to get the numbers really motoring, I think we're going to need more people involved than it just going through that relatively small site. And the other thing that I was interested in, that I would really like to see coming back to us in March, is that if you look at the table, there are quite a lot of participants starting activity, and then there's a significant drop off as you go through. And I think it would be really important for us to be getting feedback from Pat about why people are not continuing on to the next level, because that's what we need them to be doing. So if we could have that back in March, that would be really helpful. But I personally am delighted that we have got the extension that we have, and I'm not seeing any dissent from that around the table. So we'll move to the recommendation, if that's okay. And the recommendation is that the Skills Committee approve the new profile of spend in accordance with the approved extension on the innovative employment pilot. and we know the performance to date. So can I have a proposer and a seconder for those? And I'll take Eileen and then Liz on this one as proposer and seconder, and all those in favour of the recommendations, please, if you could indicate. Thank you. Yes, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you, Fliss. And the next one is also yours, I'm afraid, Fliss. And I hope you seem to be doing well. So I hope you can cope with this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So hopefully this paper doesn't need too much of an introduction, as this introduces the final draft of the employment and skills strategy. As you'll all be very familiar, we started the engagement and the development of the new employment and skills strategy in April 2021. And it's been developed through significant engagement with a number of stakeholders from across the combined authority area. As part of the engagement, the final draft of the strategy was also presented to both the chief executives and the leaders of all our constituent local authorities in November. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. It was two great sessions, actually. I enjoyed being part of those sessions. It should be noted that whilst there are actions identified in the final draft of the employment and skills strategy, a more comprehensive action plan is currently in development. And this will be shared and agreed once the strategy has been approved at the Combined Authority Board. And as we enter into the implementation phase, we look to build upon that action plan going forward, making sure that it will be live, relevant and accountable too. So the Skills Committee is invited to recommend to the Combined Authority Board that they should approve the employment and skills strategy, and also to note that the employment and skills strategy will be incorporated into the wider economic growth and skills strategy that is currently being developed, which is due to be published in March 2022. I hope that's coherent enough for you, but obviously welcome to we'll take questions.
Thank you, Fliss. And we have seen this strategy on a number of occasions and been really involved in it. And I think there's been a huge amount of support from this committee for the work that's been done as well. We've got questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on this. So I should probably have gone to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee before Fliss, so I keep getting that wrong, apologies. Do you want to follow up on those questions now from Overview and Scrutiny, Andy?
Chair, thank you. Yes, I have 6 questions for this, so I'll try and break them into bits if I may. The first 2 relate to community learning. And the question is, what's the definition of community learning and how does it support the overall skills agenda? And the second question, in terms of funding, on what criteria are community learning courses judged?
Thank you. You've had quite a full response, I think. Or have you not had, have I only got this? Okay, right. In that case, I had better read them out. I'm sorry. Right. So the response that I have a written response, which I'm sure will also be sent to you. And if there are follow-up questions on this, feel free to make those, to ask about those too. So the response, the purpose of community learning is to develop the skills, confidence, motivation, and resilience of adults of different ages and background, to re-engage in learning and progress towards formal learning or employment, and to improve health and well-being, including mental health, and develop stronger communities. So those are the kind of 3 core things, and they may have all of those, or they may have 1 or 2 of them. Community learning courses are delivered and reported under the following 4 delivery strands. The first is personal and community development learning, learning for personal and community development, cultural enrichment, intellectual or creative stimulation, and for enjoyment. The second is family English, maths and language, learning to improve the English language and maths skills of parents, carers or guardians and their ability to support their children. And 3 is wider family learning, learning to help different generations of family members to learn together how to support children's learning. And 4 is neighbourhood learning in deprived communities, which is supporting local voluntary and third sector organisations to develop their capacity to deliver learning opportunities for the residents of disadvantaged neighbourhoods. Community learning is an important component of our local learning offer for adults, supporting our life-wide learning strand of the new employment and skills strategy. Community learning supports adults to re-enter learning at any age through informal routes short courses, taster sessions, and in accessible community venues such as libraries, village schools, and community centres. The two main providers of community learning are Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council. And it should be noted that those residents who can afford to pay for learning, particularly for leisure and pleasure, are expected to contribute. And the Combined Authorities funding is targeted to addressing inequality and supporting disadvantaged learners and those furthest from the labour market. And the second question, on what, in terms of funding, on what criteria are community learning courses judged? Funding to deliver community learning is allocated to Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council as a block grant and is not subject to a funding formula in the same way as funding for adult skills qualifications. Many learning courses are not accredited. The criteria that the Combined Authority currently uses to judge provision are learner participation, funding spent, contextual data, completion of learning aims, and positive destinations. So I hope that's a relatively full answer to your questions.
Chair, yes, thank you. I think what we might be doing is looking at a rapporteur process for myself and Councillor Miss Scanlon in the future, just to have a deep dive of this to see what the spread is across those other areas that are not immediately within Peterborough or within Cambridge, to see how things are delivered elsewhere, particularly also to look at it's an interesting argument about, are you providing opportunities for people who can afford to pay at the expense of those who are disadvantaged? So it'd be interesting to see how well that's working. So thank you.
Can I just make it clear that it's Peterborough and Cambridgeshire County Council, so the whole region is covered, the whole of the Combined Authority area is covered by those bodies.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I do appreciate that. Thank you. My third question relates to apprenticeships. Are there geographical areas where apprenticeships are not being taken up when viewed across the Combined Authority area? And also, are there any particular business sectors not using apprenticeships to benefit recruitment and upskilling?
Thank you. So the response to that, the apprenticeship data for 2020-21 has recently been released, and we're currently awaiting a report from Cambridgeshire Insight, which will provide a full analysis. Unsurprisingly, due to COVID, there has been a 4% decrease in apprenticeship starts across the whole CPCA area. The region has experienced substantial growth for higher and degree apprenticeships. However, there has been a decline in the number of apprentices starting at level 2. This will be due in part to the number of popular strands at level 2 being withdrawn. We have observed a higher proportion of starts across the CPCA region in health, public services and care sector, with business administration and law being the second most popular sector. Across the area, half of all apprenticeship starts are being taken up by people aged over 25, with Peterborough and Cambridge both recording higher proportions of starts by people in this age group. In Fenland and East Cambridgeshire, cohorts tend to be younger, with a proportion of starts made by people aged under 19. Overall, Peterborough has the highest number of apprenticeship starts, with Cambridge having the lowest. But there will be much more information on that coming in a future report. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yes, I think, as you say, we need to wait for the full report to get further information. My next question, it's very brief, and I might need to explain what I was getting at here. So it's the solutions proposed to the issues raised in the SWOT analyses for all of the different regions. They seem to suggest, excuse me, I just lost my note. There we are. An expectation of a move towards a uniform approach across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and all the different districts. Given the three economies that are identified by the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Independent Economic Commission, what analysis has been carried out of the underlying reasons for differences between districts, and whether an expectation of eventual uniformity across all of them is the right one?
So I think there may have been a slight, this is question 4. That's right. Yes, I mean, the brief question doesn't really cover what you
cover the nuance of the question.
And
yes,
therefore, my answer doesn't. The written answer that I have doesn't quite apply to that. But I think I will also add something to it. So the question that we had is that the gaps identified in the SWOT analysis, are they due to lack of provision in certain areas? And if so, what is being done to remedy this, if anything? And the response to that question is that there are many reasons why gaps were identified, and some of this is due to a lack of provision in certain areas. We have already identified some cold spots in FE provision in East Cambridgeshire and St Mears. Analysis continues into how best to support these areas. The CPCA has recently invested into the new apprenticeship centre in Chatteris. Together, this work will help to close some of the gaps in regional provision. The longer term ambition is to offer a regional curriculum that meets the needs of our employers. Engagement with FE, HE and independent training providers will continue with a renewed focus on the regional curriculum as part of the implementation of the new employment and skills strategy. So that's the formal answer to the question you submitted. In answer to your question about a unified approach across the whole area, I'm not, it isn't my view, and again, I would want to see whether anybody disagrees with me that we should have a unified approach. I think what we really need to make sure is that we have a much more even access to opportunity so that learners have equality of choice across the area, but that doesn't mean that the needs in different places will not be significantly different and that they shouldn't be met in different ways. So I hope that to some extent answers the subsequent question that you asked, and I can see Liz nodding. I think that's where we're hoping to end up.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it is an email that was sent last week. I don't think it's connected with officers, so that might be why there's a little bit of a surprise at that content, but maybe we need to work on making sure that communication is a little bit slicker, but thank you. And yeah, absolutely. The fact is, because there are providers outside of the boundary of the combined authority, it could well be that provision is being provided by completely different areas that we're not particularly capturing. That was our particular concern. Also, if you've got commuters as part of your population, is quite significant in some areas. Are they receiving their training where they're working rather than where they're living? So there's a fair bit of analysis, I think, that we need to do to be clearer, but thank you very much for your answer as you gave.
Thank you. And I think then if you've got a final question.
That's final? Right, yes, there's a question, item 2.3 relates to working from home. Do we fully understand what's happening in terms of the working from home environment in the area?
So the answer to this is that it is too soon to understand the longer term impact, and this is being monitored through several actions, including monitoring of LMI. I might need somebody to tell me what LMI is, and our continued work with Metro Dynamics to understand the implications of working from home on the labour market and the impact of skills and talent. I think, again, to just expand on that, I think there is enormous interest, not just for the Skills Committee, but for the Transport Committee and a number of other, I mean, across the whole of the CPCA and all of our districts, on what the impact of changing work patterns is going to be, but it is really difficult to predict when we keep moving in and out. John, can you tell me what LMI stands for?
I think Fliss can. Is it
it's labour market information.
Yes.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I don't feel too terrible for not knowing that, but now that you say it, I can see, of course it is. Okay, Andy, is there anything else that you wanted to pick up, or is that sufficient for now? And the answers will be published.
Thank you. So it's covered virtually all of it. Wondering about the increase of working from home on the whole concept of local employment markets. It particularly reflects on the other one about, is focusing on a geographic provision actually the right one?
I think that's a very fair point, and I think it's one of the many, many things that we will all be struggling to understand from the impact of the last couple of years in the next couple of years. Okay, thank you very much for those questions. Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I have to say, sitting on the Skills Committee over these few months, yes, the level of knowledge that we now have about our local areas is huge compared to what we ever had before. And I wanted to say that I print this off now because this is my research document that I can refer to, and I look forward to getting further information as information comes out that we can act on locally. And what I also wanted to pick up, there is a question at the end of this, but I also wanted to pick up that not only have we had more information, but we now have a different way of working. So there is much more collaboration between our district and the Combined Authority that we never had before. We have access, we have regular meetings. So I'm not going to focus on anything East Cambs, you'll be pleased to hear, in any of this document, because we can do that on our local meetings that we have. And that is a complete change of relationship going forward, which I would like to thank everybody concerned for encouraging and actually achieving. What I will do, though, is ask about the actions, and this is a question for Fliss. You said, well, obviously, we've got to drill down further into our own areas. I just wondered what that process was and what the timeline is.
Liz, are you happy to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we have a document which is currently about 40 pages long, and that's just too much. And so the plan is, and what was agreed with the chief executives was that once this has been agreed and approved at CA board, then we will start putting together an implementation structure system to take things forward. And so therefore we will be seeking representation from all of the local authorities to have a subgroup, a working group to start the implementation process. And so where we can all agree on those proposed actions to therefore make sure that while there is uniformity, that we pick up all the different nuances and needs from each of the different areas.
Thank you. Excellent. I don't see any other hands. I've got Lynn, but I think one of the reasons for that is that we have had this document a number of times, and it's great to see it coming forward in its final version, and then it will finally be going to board. But I think there's a lot of support for it. Lynn.
Yes, it may be that this is just this minute been answered, but looking at the Peterborough 2 pages on page 195 and 6, I think it is. Yes, it is. There's mention in there of T-levels, expand employers engaging with schools and colleges in T-level placements. As far as I'm aware, in relation to colleges, it's only the City College, because they are at good. You have to be at good in order to do T-levels, and it's only there that and they are doing T-levels, and we're planning to in 2023. But it mentions schools, and I wasn't aware if there were schools in my area, in my local authority area, that were coming in to do and looking at T-levels with the CPCA, because it's very important for the university, of course. It is important across the region that T-levels are looked at by as many colleges and schools as possible, in my view.
Thank you, Lynn. That's an important point. Fliss, do you?
So, Councillor Ayres, you're correct. At the moment, it is only City College Peterborough who are approved to deliver T-levels. But as you say, it is an important area, and so therefore we will be making sure that we have a number of providers across the whole of the Combined Authority to deliver on T-levels, hence why it is in the strategy there to make sure that we have correct coverage across all of the different subject areas that T-levels are now available in.
Could I just ask whether when you say across all the regions, is it in, I haven't checked that it's in everybody else's area that there's mention of T-levels. But probably there is, but anyway, I just hadn't checked myself.
John.
For exactly the reasons you say, Councillor Ayres, there isn't actually, because we don't have colleges that qualify to deliver T-levels at the moment. However, a number of colleges, I think of Cambridge Regional College, are working hard to get their Ofsted ratings up. And as you say, once they're good, they can actually apply to deliver T-levels. So Peterborough City College is our flagship at the moment. But in the next 3 years, 2 years, we hope to roll that out to other colleges as well.
I think some of our colleges are in the slightly unusual position of being desperately waiting for an Ofsted report visit, which is not where many places are, in the hope of being able to pass that threshold. But actually, with Ofsted not visiting many places at the moment, it's quite hard. So let's hope that changes in the spring. I think that there is a lot of support for this paper, and I am very happy to be able to recommend it to go to board. Again, can I have a, I'll just check that I've got the recommendations right, but I think that the proposal is that we recommend this paper to go to the CPCA board, and if I can see, if I could have a proposer and a seconder for that, that would be great. So I'll take Chris and Liz as proposer and seconder for this one, and all those in favour of the recommendations. And again, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you very much to Fliss for joining us even with COVID. And I think that's your last report to be reporting. So
two more.
Oh, you've got two more. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have a short break now because I think it's not you next. Thank you, Fliss. Right, the next item on the agenda is the GrowthWorks Management Review. And I think we're probably going to Alan. Is that Alan on the, I think, yes, that's Alan. Thank you very much if you'd like to introduce this.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the Skills Committee. So the GrowthWorks performance, the report in front of you takes us to the 31st of October. However, we are reviewing year one as we speak, which is to the end of December. And it's great to say that 17 out of the 19 outcomes, key metrics, will be either met or exceeded. So that's rather good. And we're still doing some further work on that. As part of the process of GrowthWorks, we're starting to look at quality now. And GrowthWorks have introduced a Net Promoter Score, which is a client survey. The first one was in December. It's a very small sample. But the next one is at the end of March. So we'll be encouraged to see that in a bit more detail. If I could just step through the report, the first element is coaching. I'd just like to draw your attention to section 3.3, and this is businesses enrolled by size. And it's nice to see a spread across the various cadres of business sizes, 3 to 9, 10 to 49, and 50 to 249. 3.4 outlines the business challenges cited by companies, and those in green, there's three areas, all those that are to do with people and talent challenges. 3.5 is giving us detail of sectors. As you will appreciate, the growth service is not sector agnostic, and the top three sectors on there are manufacturing, professional, business services, digital, tech, computer services. So that's rather good. If I step forward into Growth Hub performance, 6 months ago, the Growth Hub was having a large volume of calls and emails. They were on average lasting 7 to 10 minutes. Now it's a lot fewer, and we're talking to people in a more meaningful and giving more depth and breadth to those conversations. And the conversations are lasting 45 plus minutes. So that's going well. Inward investment has been doing well, is doing well. And obviously in that section 4.8, there is a great success story with CMR. So I've just left that in there. On to section 5, the skills service. I don't know if Fliss is still here. I don't think she is. I'll carry on. So since the launch of the digital platform, we've seen a significant more users attracted to the site. I haven't got the details, but I will share that with you in due course. And at the end of the 2021 academic year, it's resulted in the highest performing year for the CEC contract in the combined authority. So another great success story. And then in late September, we had the launch of the Careers Hub, which was to 30 of the 72 schools and colleges. If we then look at capital grants and equity, equity is slightly behind the performance required. We have 3 great companies coming through at the moment. As you'll appreciate, there's a lot of due diligence, and therefore it's not where we ought to be, but we are confident in Q1 of recovering that situation. On the capital grants, they are exceeding our requirements at the moment. One could argue that's burning hot. We're taking some remedial action. But interestingly, a good news story is that the average cost of a job is circa 4.2k, as opposed to in the business case we had set that at 7k. So despite exceeding performance actually, and we've got to be careful of this going forward, because we don't want to exhaust the fund before the end of the service, which is the 31st of December 2023. It's still a good news story. The capital grants and equity grants come through an investment appraisal panel, which has got three directors on it, three voting members on it. One is Nitin Patel from the business board, myself from Business and Skills and Growth Co, and also Nigel Parkinson, who's the non-executive chair. I think two other things to note. One is we are to launch a performance and intelligence portal for GrowthWorks, which all of the skills committee will have access to in due course. And we are looking for one or two members to come onto a user forum and get a bit of training to start with. Everyone will get the training in due course, but we're at the stages now where we've got the design, and Fliss and I just want to take it to the next steps. And then the final thing I think to note is that while performance is great, Fliss and I are always looking at the quality side. So we're doing a bit of a quality assessment now and doing a bit of looking into the detail. So nothing untoward, but it's all looking very, very positive. And as we move into Q1 of year 2, the forecasts are looking very, very encouraging, and Fliss and I have a monthly contractual meeting with Gately Economic Growth Services as well as the wider consortium, and we have a really, really in-depth quarterly meeting with them, which has a wider audience. That's it, I think.
Thank
from
you
me.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Alan, that was really helpful. Fliss, is there anything you want to add at this point, or if not, I'll go to members quite quickly.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm good.
Great. Okay. And we do have an overview and scrutiny question on this one. So, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Alan, thank you very much for your report. And I think you've largely explained the issues in your presentation. What the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee was interested in was, if I just sort of read the question that we tried to submit, unfortunately it got lost somewhere in the ether. The report suggests significant success during the pandemic for GrowthWorks, despite the challenges we've seen in other education sectors like health, to deliver learning to students. How robust are the figures? And is there a danger that the lack of qualitative data risks misinterpretation of the success of the programme? Thank you.
Fliss, would you like to answer that, or should I?
I'm happy to. I didn't know if you'd had a prepared answer or not. So I think the data is definitely robust. One thing to note, I will answer this from a skills perspective, is that the targets in year 1 were relatively low, and so therefore with absolute certainty we can say that those targets are robust, and yeah, I would say that they're robust, and the reason why we've been able to hit them is there was a deliberate slow ramp up for the delivery of the project, and so they were able to establish the right relationships with the right people, with the provider network, with employer representative bodies and employers, and so therefore they'll be able to hit the significant increased targets over the next 2 coming years. So deliberate in design to ensure that the project would be a success.
And if I could just build on that from a business and skills perspective, the data is pulled through from HubSpot. We have full access to HubSpot. I do regular audits of HubSpot, both looking at the data, but also the detail in the data. the growth barrier, etc. So we're confident that the detail behind it is significant, and I and FLIS have weekly meetings with Gately to talk about performance and observations, etc. So I'm certainly very confident of where we are with it at the moment.
Thank you. John, did you want to also add something?
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to just add a couple of bits on the difference between veracity and efficacy of the qualitative form of the data. Alan there was leaning into the veracity in terms of its accuracy. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the efficacy of it and the actual impacts of it. In the first year, not hugely surprisingly, a lot of the data we're picking up is companies engaged, jobs that they're claiming, learners engaged. What we're not picking up yet, which we will do as time goes past, is, and Alan did refer to it on growth. On the growth side, we'll actually be looking at the additionality. So we've got these companies engaged on the growth side. They're claiming that they'll get so many jobs at so many pounds per job, but we'll actually be doing net promoter scores with them, so they can actually tell us, did it really work, and actually looking at that additionality and say, but did this specific support make a difference, and how much of a difference to those 10 jobs that you put on, how much did this actual support make? So we will be doing qualitative additionality impact. And then on skills, what you're picking up at the moment is engagement in terms of the number of learners engaged. What we will pick up as they go through engagement, through their qualification into completion, we will pick up, but what did they do? Was it a qualification? What qualification? And did they complete? And what was their onward journey? We will pick all that up. It's just a feature of the first year of the program that we're picking up quite activity-based data at the moment that will move into outputs, and then it will move into outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. I mean, I think it's so difficult to measure this early on. You're quite right, and it does need to go through a time period before you know where you stand. And to me, the value of the provision of finance to deliver skills is that it's actually shown in terms of a qualification or an improvement in that individual learner. And it's so difficult to get that information sometimes. So I do appreciate how difficult this is early on. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the question from Overview and Scrutiny. I'll come to Eileen next.
Thank you. I found all the returns very interesting in terms of the businesses engaged in the numbers and their reasons. I just wondered, is there any geographical data being collected where these companies are? I was looking through this, and unless I've missed something, I couldn't find it there.
Yes, if I may just add to that. Yes, so basically in the next report, we have started to break down to geographical area so that it gives further information. And also with the launch of the performance and intelligence portal, you'll be able to see that at a glance in the dashboards, but that will be in due course. But yes, that data is now available and will be in the next pack.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this report? Lynn.
Can I just ask when we hear about this next, because it's obvious that the next report on is going to be very important because it's going to be showing us more qualitative data. I can't quite remember whether this comes back to us every 6 months or every year.
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months, even better.
There you are.
Thank you.
But I also think that it would be good for us all to engage with GrowthWorks in between, actually, not just in committee, but also to learn a bit more. So that might be something I follow up. Okay, I think the report is very much welcomed. It does paint a very good picture in terms of meeting the targets, but it's been interesting to hear that actually the coming year is going to be more of a challenge, and we'll be making sure we're very much engaged with that as a committee, because I think it's a really important part of our work. I don't see any other hands. So if we move to the recommendation is that we note the GrowthWorks programme performance up to the 31st of October 2021. So the report is for noting and no vote is required. So we'll move on to part 3 of our agenda, which is on delivery. And the first item on the agenda is the adult education budget annual return and evaluation. I do have an overview and scrutiny question. So this time I'll do it as it is on the agenda, and I'll take that before we have the report. So if you'd like to do your question, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. There are 4 questions. 1 or 2 are very brief, and again, I might need to explain from the phantom email that does clarify it. The first question says, has it been a policy-based decision that has seen the loss of so many providers? But the thrust of the question was, what are the consequences, intended and otherwise, of the move to do so substantially, reducing the number of A/B suppliers?
If I read you out the response that I've got here, and then you can let me know if you want more than this. It says in 2019-20, the first year of devolved AEB, a policy decision was taken by the Combined Authority to reduce the number of directly funded providers delivering within the sub-region from 190 in 2018-19 to 17 in 19-20. In subsequent years, new providers have been procured through the in-year commissioning process. So I think it's partly to do with the nature of the funding, the directly funded providers, rather than them having to engage with an in-year commission with a different process. So does that answer your question sufficiently?
I think we probably need to have another look and see. The question is, there were so many providers providing. There are now so few. I think that the total is about 24 if you look at the subcontracted groups as well. I may be wrong on those numbers, but it does seem like a huge reduction, and to review the impact on this change is probably worthwhile us doing in the background. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Yes, I think it probably would be. Do you want to ask the next question then?
Thank you. Yes, yeah, this was my one, which is how does the skills strategy respond to people who might wish to become entrepreneurs?
So the answer to this one is, through the adult education budget, we will continue to fund business startup courses to support entrepreneurs, such as the Level 2 certificate in creating a business startup. To note, we funded 127 learners across 4 providers in 2020-21 on accredited business startup courses. We will also continue to fund business management courses, and there were 242 learners in 2020-21. In addition to accredited courses, a wide range of online business support resources have been developed by GrowthWorks and are available for free on their website. Is that sufficient?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And then question 9.
Question 9, yes. Again, this is maybe somewhat too brief to answer, so there is a bit of an explanation. The student survey stated that 32% of them wanted to gain skills needed to move into employment, and 22% wanted better jobs. That was under their motivation. In terms of outcomes, it was only 7% on each of those, and I appreciate it's probably a small sample size, but the question is, why are we not meeting the aspirations of the students in terms of the move from motivation into outcome?
So the answer on this one, the question that was asked of learners was, what motivated you to apply for your course? All 112 respondents answered this question, and responses could select multiple answers which corresponded with their individual motivations, such as their wish to progress into employment or within their career. The survey response does not infer that courses are not meeting the learners' aspirations. It only captured those aspirations. Does that answer your question?
Part 1, yes. It's just, I'm assuming that because the course isn't complete and we're asking students of their outcomes before they're ready to actually go into employment, that might be why these figures are so different. But maybe I can explore that outside the meeting.
I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's fine. In which case, do you want to move on to question 10?
Thank you. Yes. And this question is, are we confident that the programs that are focused on the right people? It appears that enrolments are largely at level 2 learners.
So the response to this one, this is a helpful and insightful question from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. which has also been highlighted by the Business Board as an area for our providers to focus on. The new employment and skills strategy shows that we need to increase the number of residents qualified to level 3 and above. Given the focus on addressing inequalities, such as targeting low-skilled adults across the sub-region, including Peterborough and Fenland, it is right that a higher proportion of enrolments were at level 2 and below in 2019-20 and 2021. The AEB evaluation and report to the Business Board shows that historically, an insufficient proportion of enrolments have been at level 3. Given the local labour market needs, our colleges and providers need to ensure there is progression from level 2 to level 3, and they are actively promoting opportunities at level 3. To address this, a report was approved by the Skills Committee on the 15th of March 2021 by allocating additional funding for first level 3 courses and the local flexibility for a second level 3. For future years, we're planning on the basis of doubling level 3 enrolments each year for the next 5 years. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. I think that's something for us to look at and keep an eye on to see how well that's developing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your excellent questions. And I will now move to Parminder to introduce the report, much of which has been discussed. Parminder.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Coles has picked up on some of the points that I wanted to raise in my introduction to this paper. So the purpose of this paper and its appendices is to update the Skills Committee members and also to provide greater transparency of the performance and the impact of the adult education budget following devolution and the second year of delivery, the 2020-21 academic year. Of course, this was the second year that AEB has been impacted by COVID-19. So the first part of the paper shares the annual return that the Combined Authority makes to the Department of Education in January each year. This is to provide a high-level monitoring data to the department, including the financial outturn, participation in learning, and achievements. The headline here is that compared to 2019-20, there was a 9% increase in enrolments overall and a 20% increase in spend. And Appendix A sets out the information that will be submitted to the department. As part of our local assurance framework, an independent evaluation of AEB is undertaken every year by Cambridgeshire Skills, and this is included in Appendix B, which includes a quantitative analysis of provider data, as well as qualitative research through an anonymised survey completed by AEB providers, and for the first time, a learner survey and interviews with stakeholders. The researcher also reported on the local funding flexibilities that we have implemented, although concluded it is too soon to fully evaluate their impact. And the provider survey revealed that overall they value the funding flexibilities. The stakeholder survey identified a greater appetite for collaborative working, and most providers were satisfied with the support they receive from the Combined Authority. The learner survey picked up the motivations of learners and, interestingly, the link between health and skills, with 79% of learners stating they were motivated to take up learning for health reasons, mental or physical, and saw an improvement in their health as an outcome. Appendix C is a report that was requested by the Business Board to spotlight the impact of AEB in supporting the upskilling of employees in the sub-region. Our mission is to bring employers into the heart of the skills system and to improve the responsiveness of providers to employer need. So this report should be seen as a very helpful baseline to help us to drive improvements. And the main findings are the low number of enrolments on level 3 courses during the first 2 years of AEB devolution, and also the delivery of qualifications that align with our growth sectors and also some of our foundational sectors, such as construction. And finally, members had requested in previous committee meetings early sight of the emerging work that we are doing to identify the cold spots in provision. The first iteration of this analysis is shared in Appendix D with analysis of the 2019-20 AEB data inclusive. The second version of the cold spot analysis, which is currently underway, will look at the 2020-21 AEB data, but crucially, other funding streams, such as 16 to 18, advanced learner loans, and the impact of online and blended learning on the cold spots. So, in summary, members are requested to approve the adult education budget statutory annual return for submission to the Department of Education for the 2021 academic year, and also to note the evaluation, business board report, and the early findings of the AEB cold spot analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parminder. Liz.
Thank you, Parminder. First of all, congratulations on your evaluation. It's very encouraging. Thank you so much. I only want to dwell on one area really, and that's still the balance of supply and demand and underspends, and indeed with the boot camp reduced provision. So we are obviously offering courses that we have identified we want youngsters, or lots of youngsters, to go on. They're not necessarily biting at this. Perhaps levelling up might not be their agenda, although it might be ours. So I just wanted to ask, I think the key is what you were talking about, which is the funding flexibility, i.e. the change in mindset between courses being put on and local need, identifying what is required. I think we're not very good at that locally, about identifying, putting together those plans, actually putting together bids and so on. And I know you're working hard on that, but we do need, I feel that we need some more help locally in order to grab that money that you've got with the needs that we've got, but actually probably don't have the infrastructure to put together those bids. And I'm just wondering how that could be improved. I think without that, I think it'll always be a sort of top-down approach, and I think that's going to work ultimately.
Thank you. Very helpful points. Parminder, do you want to respond to any of that?
I think there's an item on the boot camps which is coming up on the agenda, so we can pick up the point about the boot camps there. I think the point about infrastructure, the cold spot analysis is the first part of addressing some of the infrastructure issues in terms of provision. In terms of the other bit around Councillor Every's question is, I guess, around some of the local capacity to seize opportunities around bids. But I think we do have some good examples of where the combined authority has been a very helpful enabler. The Levelling Up University bid being a good example of that, and the work that Bliss and her team have done around the boot camps is another good example of that as well. So I think I agree there's more that we need to do, but we do have some, if you like, early wins and a body of experience of being successful in accessing other funding and bids.
Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Just a brief one, really, because I think it's quite a useful paper that does clearly highlight some areas that we probably, as a combined authority, haven't really looked at in the past, and it might help give focus into those areas where where we could actually make a big difference.
Good, thank you. I agree. Any other comments on this, Lynn?
Thank you. I was a bit nonplussed by the cold spot analysis and didn't quite understand it, because is it probably the case that some of these areas, some of these wards that are identified as not having the learners, it's because they don't need it there, because there isn't the deprivation, there isn't the need to learn, or what? I'm just asking the question because I don't know these areas myself, and whether the identification of them is is as important as it seems as being a cold spot. Just because you have a cold spot doesn't mean to say that the people there need the learning.
Do you want to respond on that first, Parminder, and then maybe I'll...
I think I was trying to give a bit of a health warning in my introduction to the cold spot analysis, just to say that this is it's looking very crudely only at AEB, and it's not looking at deprivation and prior attainment. So Councillor Ayres makes a very important point that when we do the next iteration of this research, is that we need to bring those factors into play as well, especially around population density and prior attainment and the local need.
Thank you, that's helpful. I can see why you might be surprised about some of them now I'm looking at them. Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions on this, so I think we will move to the recommendation, which is to note, I think, again, report, I think I've lost the right page on my paper. Do we need a vote on this one, Tamar? We do. Okay, in which case, can I ask for a proposer and seconder? So I've got Eileen to propose. John will second, and all those in favour. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the skills boot camps, which I think are being introduced by Fliss. And I don't think we have any overview and scrutiny questions for this one, so we'll just move to Fliss, who seems to have disappeared. I'm hoping she will reappear as if by magic. There she is. Wonderful. Thank you, Fliss.
Sorry, my mouse isn't working, so it's making life even more challenging for me. It's all good.
You're back. You're back.
I am. So this paper provides an update on the performance of the contract to deliver the digital skills boot camps in the east of England. You'll recall that the award of the contract was delayed, and subsequently time was very tight to mobilise the contract. As expected, achieving the target student numbers in this time period is challenging, so much so that Cambridge Regional College have requested to reduce the size of their contract, and therefore we have recently appointed a new provider to take on the allocated 300 target enrolments. We are confident that we will be able to deliver the majority, if not all, of the contract allocation, and the numbers you have there are somewhat out of date due to paper submissions, and we're currently just collating our January figures. There's a few points to add which aren't in the papers. So the first is that DFE have recently agreed to extend the time period for this current contract. And so we're expecting to be able to have an additional 4 weeks to get our learners through the boot camps. Originally, there was a hard cut-off date of the 31st of March. We're now hoping that this is at least until the end of April. In addition to that, we've also been asked to submit a proposal and have submitted that proposal to extend the Wave 2 existing contract for a further 12 months. And we should find the outcome of that within the next couple of weeks. And in addition to that, we've also been asked to put together a proposal for Wave 3 boot camps. And so this will be a lot wider than the digital boot camps. This will cover construction, a number of technical pathways, including green, of which we will therefore move to grant funding for boot camps for the April 22 to March 23. And so we're currently working with providers and employers to look at what the need would be within the region. So there's 3 updates there. One is extension to the existing contract for current learners, then a further 12-month extension for the digital boot camps for delivery in East of England. And then the third is for putting together a proposal for the combined authority area to be awarded grant funding to deliver boot camps for the next financial year as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Fliss. Comments and questions on this paper? Lynn?
I did just wonder whether one of the points why there wasn't such a take-up was because obviously the colleges are open in the daytime and not necessarily in the evening. And that was just a thought to say that probably other providers might do better. But most of all, I wondered whether we were the only ones struggling alone across the nation, or whether it was just here, or whether this was common across the UK.
I think that's a very helpful question. Fliss, do you know the answer?
Yes, and I've recently appointed somebody to our team who was leading on the boot camps at Liverpool Combined Authority area. So especially Wave 2 contract, it was very late being awarded, and so therefore there wasn't the run-up time of which you would expect to therefore onboard learners and work with employers too. I think it's fair to say that colleges have struggled across the country, and it's more independent training providers who have led on boot camps because, as you rightly say, Councillor Ayres, of their delivery model, of their infrastructure, means that independent training providers are able to move a lot faster than colleges. So there is mixed take up, especially in construction and a number of different areas for student take up. But I'm confident that we will hit 90 to 100% of our target for this year, especially now we have another independent training provider who's delivering on the boot camps.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Any further questions on this paper? I don't see any more. So thank you very much for the report, Fliss, and we'll look forward to hearing I'm trying to remember whether this comes back in March or a bit later. I think maybe a bit later, but anyway, we will look forward to hearing future progress on this one as well as on so many other things. The recommendation, we are recommended to note the paper providing an update on the skills boot camps Wave 2. So it's for noting and no vote is required. So thank you very much, Fliss, and get well soon if we don't see you again in this meeting. I'm sure we'll see you again soon in other places. Right, so the next, and I think our last report, is the Budget and Finance Performance Report, and that's with Vanessa, who has just appeared. Hello, Vanessa.
Good afternoon, good morning, Chair, and good morning, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present this paper. This paper is to note the update and financial position relating to the revenue funding lines within the Skills Committee remit. A brief overview of the paper. The paper is updated to the end of November due to the timelines on reporting of this. There is very little to update you on verbally with the December figures. The figures are very similar, and we're still projecting the same sort of financial outcomes. So I'm not planning on giving you too many updates that are not already in the paper. With regard to the expenditure, the main areas have been highlighted for you. If I move down to the first one, which is the AEB devolution programme, where it's showing an underspend of approximately £912,000. This is part of the paper that was brought to you in September, where there was full details of the projected underspends and how these were being mitigated and spread across the academic year rather than just the financial year, which is part of the reason for the underspend. The CEC line recently started their programme in the beginning of September with the Careers Hub element of it, which is a new part of the contract for us. Things are progressing very well, and this is just the majority of that spend is for staffing, and that's where we just have a little bit of a delay in getting those programs set up and moved across and recharged through. Digital Skills Bootcamp, which Fliss has just talked about, she's given you more details on the financial underspend on that one. And additionally, the Health and Social Care Work Academy, that's been part of the separate paper for this meeting today. Finally, the last two, the Skills Advisory Panel and the Skills Rapid Response. Most of these budgets have been committed now, and we are not really forecasting an underspend on either of those areas. The final area just to report to you on is on income, and as you'll see from the table that all the income has actually been received that we were pretty much looking to get, other than the Careers Hub, which comes in on a quarterly basis in arrears. And that is my presentation to the committee, if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Are there questions for Vanessa? I have to say that I'm sorry for saying this at this point. I think I've missed an item, so we might have to go back and cover one. So apologies for that. But sticking with the budget performance report at this point, does anyone have any comments or questions for Vanessa? I just have one. We've got quite a significant underspend. Are we relatively confident that that underspend will be addressed in the next few months, or are we looking that we're likely to continue to have an underspend kind of moving forward? In which case, I think it might be interesting for us to think as a committee about what we want to do to address that, to make sure that we are taking actions to increase it. I mean, I think a lot of this is about numbers of learners that are coming into schemes, and maybe we need to be thinking about how we use our underspend and where we use our underspend in order to do some work to get more learners coming in more quickly. So, I mean, if you're telling me, Vanessa, that the underspend is all accounted for and it's all going to get caught up and we shouldn't be doing that, then that would be interesting. But if that's not, I'm going to come to John, actually, he's going to answer it. But I do think that actually, if we've got quite a substantial underspend, we ought to think about how we're using that to address getting more people into the system. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have a substantial underspend, and you'll note from Vanessa's report that most of it's in AEB, not least because that's the majority of the funding we have at 11.5 million. We noted this at the last committee meeting in November, actually, and immediately after that meeting, Parminder was tasked with conducting a deep dive review of an action plan to get us exactly where you're talking there in terms of as much as we can spend, and also creating some learning about why we were behind. Is it just COVID, or is it other things as well? And what we're going to be doing about it in the next academic year, and also how much we can transfer across from this year if we're underspent into the next academic year. So part of it is why, part of it is can we do new things to get this money spent, and part of it is can we roll some of it over, and what would that look like, and how would we learn from that. So Parminder will be presenting that. He's just presenting it to myself this month, and he'll be presenting it to the Skills Committee next month.
That's really helpful to know. Thank you. That's a very important piece of information for us to take into this budget discussion, I think. I think there's an additional question maybe, which is about who we're missing. I think in terms of that adult education budget, looking at who is coming in and who isn't, I think is a key part of that question. Vanessa.
Sorry, yes, if I can just confirm that both the AEB budget and the Health and Care Sector Work Academy budgets are ring-fenced, so those budgets will be rolled over across into the next financial year, so there's no opportunity to spend those in other areas. We won't be spending that funding this financial year. There is really no opportunity and no time. The separate paper that Fliss presented on the Healthcare and Sector Work Academy programme has asked for a reprofile of the budget into the next financial year, which is what we're aiming to do. And as John has just described, the AEB programme will look at a reprofile into the next financial year, which will link into both the current academic year and the next academic year. So I think those will be addressed within the different papers that have been presented and the work that's ongoing at the moment.
Thank you, Vanessa. That's really helpful. And the adult and health, the health part of that underspend we discussed earlier in the meeting, and we are very keen to make sure that we're following very closely the reprofiling of that and making sure that we're getting enough people into the system to spend that money. I think, yes, it's good to know that there's a similar approach being taken in the adult education budget. Eileen.
Thank you. I was just wondering whether there's a problem with people who are unemployed, whether if they are they able to go on an education course without losing right to their benefits because they're not actively seeking work. I know that if they're in one of these sector work academies, that's probably accounted for, but I was just wondering whether people who weren't in a sector work academy who just want to take up adult education to improve their employability, whether they would be penalised by having their benefits.
I don't know whether you're able to answer that, Vanessa, or whether you want me to come.
I don't think I can answer that. That would have to be a Fliss or a Parminder answer, I'm afraid. I don't know enough about programmes to actually give you a definitive answer on that.
I don't know whether we can get an answer to you after the meeting.
Yeah,
if we're not there at present.
Well,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
Thank you. So I think we've probably noted your report, Vanessa. Thank you very much. Let me just find the right bit. And again, this report is for noting and we don't need a vote. So thank you so much, Vanessa. And we will look for, I mean, I do understand that we're not going to change this, the underspend situation within this financial year, but I think we need to be making sure that we're really focusing on it for the next 6 months, really, to make sure that we're not in the same position next year. Thank you very much indeed. So apologies, everybody. We now need to go back to the local skills report refresh, which I skipped over earlier in the meeting. So Fliss is back again, still surviving. Thank you very much, Fliss. If you want to introduce this one, that would be great.
I will do. I'm very conscious of time as well. So the local skills report is a requirement of the Skills Advisory Panel, which is known as SAP, funded by the Department for Education. The first local skills report for the combined authority was published in March 2021, and the DFE has subsequently requested for the local skills report to be refreshed. This is to be published by January 28th of this year. So the Employment and Skills Board, which is our SAP, have approved the content of the draft for publication. And one thing to note, it's still awaiting the section on the adult education budget, which Parminder will supply before the deadline to be published. So the main areas that have been refreshed include the new employment and skills strategy, subject to that being approved by the Combined Authority Board, and all of the core indicators have also been updated where the data has been refreshed from the previous publication in March 2021. So the local skills report holds lots of very good and rich data, and this is often used by central government departments to inform provide them with a picture of what's happening within the local area as well. So it is a report that is used quite a bit, and it's something that I think we should probably carry on doing, even if the department decide that this is something that they no longer want to take forward. And the reason why I say that is that the skills advisory panels will probably not be funded going forward due to the rollout of LSIPs. So we're still waiting to find out exactly what's happening, but this could be the last, I guess, mandated local skills report in its current guise. But this is just to note, so you're aware of the work that's been undertaken, which will be published.
Thank you very much. So there's lots of familiar stuff in here that we've seen in other reports and in other places. So I don't suppose there's an enormous need to discuss. I don't see any hands. So thank you very much, Fliss. I think it has now been noted. Apologies for skipping over it earlier on, but that's great. And I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Are you happy that we've noted that now, Tamar, thank you. And thank you all very much indeed for your time. And we will look forward to meeting again in March, where we'll pick up a number of the things that we've covered today. So thank you for your time and for a timely end of the meeting, and see you in a few weeks' time. Thank you. Bye-bye.